Hello students, in this video I'll try to answer some of the frequently asked questions about the IELTS speaking interview. So I'm going to jump right in. The first question many people ask is, how many parts are there in the IELTS speaking test? So the IELTS speaking test, the interview consists of three parts: part 1, part 2, part 3. Part 1 is going to last 5 minutes. It's basically chit chat. The examiner is going to ask you some very simple questions about you and your life. It is called introduction and interview. Part 2 is called individual long run. That means you have to speak at length on a given topic. The topic is given to you in the form of a cue card, and you have to speak for 2 minutes on the topic. But before that, you also get 1 minute to think and plan what you're going to say. And then part 3 is called two-way discussion. The examiner is going to ask you some further questions on the topic that you got in part 2, and that is going to last 5 to 6 minutes. The next question some people ask is, how long does the whole test take? So it takes about 14 minutes, 11 to 14 minutes to be exact. The interview will not be less than 11 minutes and it will not cross 14 minutes. The examiner is going to control the length of time for which he engages you. And as I said, part 1 is going to take 5 minutes, part 2 is going to take 3 minutes. That means 1 minute for thinking and planning and 2 minutes for speaking. And then part 3 may take 5 or 6 minutes. Next question is, how should I greet the examiner? So you just greet the examiner like you greet any stranger in a formal social situation. What do you say when you meet somebody for the first time? You say good morning, good evening, good afternoon, sir, if he's elder to you. But chances are when you walk into that room, the examiner is going to greet you, and then you will respond to him by saying good morning, sir, and he will offer you a seat. He will make you feel comfortable, and he will also check your ID, your passport. He may ask you some very basic questions like your name and the place you belong to, and then he will get rolling with the interview. Number 4, how will the speaking test be marked? Yes, this is a very important question. You must understand how you are going to be assessed on your performance. So please understand there are 4 criteria on which your performance will be judged. The first one is fluency. It means that you can speak fast, you can speak at length, you are willing to give a long talk on a topic, you can speak without pauses, without any kind of hesitation. You don't correct yourself time and again, and you also use connectors so that one sentence flows into the next sentence. I must mention that speed is very important. If you can speak fast, that shows that you are able to process the language in your head very fast, and that shows your comfort level with the language. So this is the most important criterion which is used to assess your performance. Second is vocabulary. That means you can use a range of words, and you use paraphrasing. When you repeat the same point, you don't use the same wording, you say it in some other way, and you also use collocations. Collocations basically means groups of words that are used together. For example, if I want to talk about stress, if I'm describing to somebody what kind of stress I'm suffering from, what are the words that I will use with stress to express myself? I will say to have stress, to suffer from stress, to be under stress, to be stressed, to face a stressful situation, to cope with stress, to get rid of stress, to get relief from stress, to de-stress. If a person doesn't know these words, then he will not be able to express himself very nicely on that given topic. Vocabulary also means that you can use special words when you talk about different topics. For example, when you talk about pollution, when you talk about education, you can use those special words which are used when discussing those topics. Then the third criterion is grammar, which means first of all you can use tenses correctly. When you talk about the past, you use the past tense, and when you talk about the future, you use the future tense. When you talk about the present, you use the present tense, and you also use SES correctly with the first form of the verb. This is a very common mistake which non-native speakers of English make while speaking English. they don't add s or es to a verb when they talk about he, she, it. So they will say something like this, something like he go, she go, I goes. uh, Grammar also means that you can use a range of sentence structures and you don't make mistakes when you form sentences. Okay, the last criterion is pronunciation. This means that the sounds that you make are accurate. The way you say words is accurate. For example, you don't say colony, you say colony. You don't say Canada, you say Canada. And that your speech is easily understood. When you speak, the other person is easily, without stressing himself, he is able to understand what you're saying. And that you have a neutral accent. There's no regional touch to your speech. For example, it's difficult to make out whether you belong to Punjab or Haryana or Maharashtra. And next is being able to use intonation. You know, some people speak in monotone, like I came to your house yesterday, but you were not there, so I went back. So there should be some, this is not the correct way to speak. There should be some ups and downs in the tone of your voice when you speak. There should be some variation in the speed when you speak. But the last thing I want to point out regarding this question is that your accent does not matter. You will not be given any extra marks if you try to speak with an American accent or a British accent, and you will not be penalized if you don't speak with an American or British accent, because accent is disregarded in the IELTS exam. So that's it. Yeah, these are the 4 criteria on which you will be judged. Question number 5 is, how many questions will be asked in the IELTS interview? Well, in part 1, the examiner will ask you around 12 questions from 3 different areas. For example, 4 questions on flowers, 4 questions on your family, and 4 questions on your food habits. 12 questions in all. Then you get the cue card, and then in part 3, he will ask you 5, 6 or 7 questions depending on the length of your answers. If you're giving very short answers, then he may have to ask more questions. But if your answers are long enough, then he will restrict himself to 6, 7 questions. Number 6 is, do I need to expand my answers? Yes, of course. You have to be willing to speak at length about the things that you are speaking about. You have to show the examiner that you are happy to give long answers, because that shows your comfort level with the examiner. But lengthy answers matter only in part 3. In part 1, you can give short answers, and even in part 3, sometimes you don't have too many ideas about a question, so you can give short answers. Next is, do I need to speak fast? Of course, you need to speak as fast as you can, but you should not speak so fast that your words are merging together and they are tumbling over each other, and the other person cannot understand what you're saying. So you have to speak fast enough but not too fast, and this you can improve your speech only by speaking a lot, by doing this speech practice at home. Next question is that, should I maintain an eye contact with the examiner while speaking? Well, the first thing to know is that this is not a test of your confidence. So like when you go for a job interview, or when you go for an interview in a competitive exam like IAS, everybody advises you to look into the eyes of the examiner. So in IELTS exam, it is not important from that point of view, because they are not judging your confidence level or your personality. But of course, it is very natural to look at the other person when you're speaking. What do you do when you speak to somebody? You look at that person. And second thing is that by looking at the examiner, you can get very subtle hints about how you are doing. From his facial expressions and from his gestures, you can make out whether you are going in the right direction with a particular answer, whether he's happy, satisfied with the way the interview is progressing, whether you are going off track with an answer. So you can use this information to modify your responses. Question number 9 is, do I need to talk for full 2 minutes in part 2? See, the official time length of the speech is 1 to 2 minutes, but it is highly recommended that you speak for at least 1.5 minutes. As soon as you cross 1 minute 30 seconds, you are in the safe zone. So your speech should be between 1.5 minutes and 2 minutes. If you cross 2 minutes, then the examiner is going to stop you. Number 10, can I choose a topic in part 2 or request the examiner to change it? Absolutely not. The examiner will select a topic for you, and that topic is final. It will not be changed on your request, and you can definitely not choose the topic that you speak on. The examiner is going to choose a topic for you. Okay, next question is, do I need to cover all the cues in the part 2 speech? Yes, it is highly recommended that you try to cover all the cues. The cues are there to help you expand your ideas and to enable you to speak for full length of time. But the sequence is not important. You can cover the cues in any sequence, but yes, I recommend that you try to cover all the cues. Question number 12 is, should I make notes during the time I'll get for thinking? Yes, this is an important question. When you get 1 minute to think and plan, they also provide you a rough sheet of paper and a pencil with which you can make notes if you want. But I don't recommend making notes during that time, because 1 minute is too short for planning and thinking as it is, and you'll be just wasting your time by trying to make notes, and you will not be able to make any notes in 1 minute. See, when you get a cue card, the first 30 seconds are spent on reading the cue card, the topic and the cues. In the remaining 30 seconds, what can you write on your rough sheet of paper? 1 or 2 sentences at the max. That will not help you at all when you start speaking. So there's only one thing that you can write on that rough sheet of paper, and that is the tense in which you have to speak give your whole speech. For example, if it's about a person you respect, or a person you like, or a person you enjoy spending time with, then you will speak the whole of this cue card in the present tense. If the topic is about an event that happened in the past, then of course you have to use the past tense. And if the topic is about something that you would like to do in the future, then you have to use the future tense. So if you write that on that rough sheet of paper, you will constantly be reminded to use the correct tense, and you will not make this mistake.